Kalam podcast is made possible through listeners like you. If you enjoy listening to Kalam, please subscribe to the show in whatever podcast application you're listening to right now, and please give us a rating. It helps other people find out about us. And if you'd like to support the show with a small donation, consider signing up to Kalam Podcast on Patreon for just $3 a month. In addition to supporting the show, you'll gain access to lots of great bonus content. Go to patreon.com and search for Kalam Podcast, or go straight to patreon.com/Kalam Podcast. That's patreon.com/Kalam Podcast. Now, on to the show. Hello and welcome to... Let's try that again. Hello and welcome to the fourth installment of Munadama, the series where the team behind Kalam podcast, Edgar, Nora, Sam, Arthur, in no particular order, drink alcoholic beverages and shoot the shit about the past few episodes that we've been doing, about social media interactions, about how we're feeling in life in general. I remember I did this once and I expressed my depression, and you guys comforted me. It was quite nice. So that's what we're going to do today. I'd like
Once
to...
we lost track and talked about the grammar of Akkadian for 15 minutes. That was fun.
The language Akkadian.
Yes.
And so I would like
One
to...
time Sam came through with a really good quote.
Sam did come through with a really good quote. Some weeks you fuck about, and some weeks you find out.
Right.
There's decades where you fuck around and weeks when you find out.
Yeah.
That was the one, yes.
Yeah. I've been watching... I'm going straight into
Going.
I've been watching a British crime series with my girlfriend. And...
Which one?
Lots of them. I can't remember their names.
Okay.
And there was one guy, a cop, who instead, what you just said, fuck around and find out, he said, fuck about and find out, which I thought was a great British version of it.
Good, yeah.
This has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. I would like to welcome the latest addition to Kalam Podcast.
That's me.
That's Nora Adin Fares.
Thank you.
Let's give a warm Munadama welcome to her.
I do feel very warm. Thank you for the wine and the yunmus. But can somebody please explain what Munadama is? What are we doing?
Usually I leave that up to Sam, but then we always delve into the realm of pedophilia somehow. So I feel like we maybe should not.
Why shouldn't we? The short story...
Take it away.
The short linguistic background is that there's the concept of the Nadim, or in plural, the Nudama, the people who sit with the Sultan or something similar and are his boon companions.
I think I saw pictures of them, Bashar al-Assad's friends, in Speedos that we saw in the pictures.
Right, yes,
yeah,
exactly.
those guys. Those guys.
But we're not, inshallah, we're not the Nudama of Bashar al-Assad, but the Nudama of Edgar the Sultan.
You are the Sultan here today, yes.
Stop. Everything I say?
No, I agree.
And then the Munadama, of course, is one instance of such a sitting, when you sit down with your Nudama and shoot the shit, as you are apt to call it.
Yes, as I so eloquently expressed. So that's what it is. Is that clear enough? Do you understand?
I think so. Maybe we'll have to do it again for the next episode as well. Like for the next Munadama. I think we're going to have to do the explanation over and over again.
Yeah. I think so too.
Okay.
This time I managed to keep away from the pedophilia as well, so we might be
Good job.
in the quality of the introduction.
Alhamdulillah. Also, I think maybe we might have to do one entire episode of Kalam Podcast explaining Munadama.
I think so.
And the historic significance of it. Actually, I'm not even kidding. It would be interesting.
Great. Yeah.
Famous Munadamas. Mm-hmm. That could be an interesting thing. You know how history podcasts do these like Paradise Hotel of medieval kings. They do this, or like World Cup of famous dogs, or something like that.
Right.
I listen to a lot of British history podcasts, so we could do like
historic Munadamas.
Or like fantasy Munadamas. You know how like your favorite blunt rotation. You know, instead of the blunt rotation, it's the Munadama, and so you pick historic figures from our field, from the Middle East, and you put them together in a Munadama. And then we could act it out. So I could be...
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I want to be Zir Salim.
You want to be who?
Azir Salim.
Who's that?
It was a great warrior during the Islamic era.
Oh, fantastic.
He drank a lot of wine.
Nice.
He loved women, and dancers and stuff like that. And
Sounds
he
just
was
like you.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. I love women. But he was like a very known drunk in his village. But then when his brother got killed,
Nothing like being a known drunk.
when his brother got killed in like a betrayal, he kickstarted a 40-year-long war called the Basus War.
Oh right, the
Yes,
Basus War.
yes,
of course,
exactly.
of
He's the
course.
one that started it. I want to be him.
Yeah, the Basus War.
It's one of the. You're talking about the guy who wrote the Mu'allaqa on the Basus War, or someone else?
No, I don't think he wrote it. Rabi'a is his brother.
Yeah,
It's Ibn
the
Rabi'a.
poet.
Yeah,
the poet,
exactly.
right.
Yeah, but Kulayb Ibn Rabi'a is the brother that dies. But Azir Salim is his brother.
This is a Munadama.
It
happening.
absolutely is. I'll be Azir
It's literally
Salim.
happening.
Okay, so a glass of wine and then we're on to the Basus War.
Okay, so who would you be, Arthur, in a historic Munadama?
You know, recently I was on YouTube, as I often am, and have any of you seen this video?
Arthur's a cusp Gen Z millennial.
True. So it's not really. I mean, it's Central Asia. Central Asia is kind of part of the Middle East.
Yeah.
Samarkand.
Yeah. So it's basically about the last two Jews living in Afghanistan. And
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think I saw.
You want to be the
something-
last two Jews living in
I would like to reenact how that went, because the video is basically that they just like bicker with each other for 5 minutes. So it's like a guy interviewing this old man, and he's like, I'm talking about his business, and then he starts talking about how the one other Jew still living in Afghanistan keeps stealing his customers.
Oh no.
And then you just hear in the distance this guy going, "You scoundrel! You pimp!" I mean, the subtitles are like really funny. You pimp. But in Dari. So that's
I would
what
see this in a play.
Yeah.
I would go to the theater to see this.
Sounds like the Falafel Sahyoun in Beirut. That's hilarious. Okay, Sam, what would you be? Who would you be?
This is an unexpected question. I have no clue.
Was it really unexpected?
Yeah.
We're going around the table.
Oh, yeah, okay. I should have been thinking about who I was supposed to be instead of listening to you guys.
I think you
I have
are.
Oh,
a
that's
favorite-
very sweet.
I do have a favorite character though from these kinds of weird setups, which is anyone who's read Islamic history knows that there's always this kind of social setups where people trying to get at each other. I think you have the same with Imrul Qais, for example, where he's like brought into to some king's court, and then he like is suddenly confronted with his most hated adversary, poet, and then they kind of fight it out in poetry and stuff like that. But that's not who I wanted to be. I want to be the guy.
Fight
I'm
it
not
out
sure.
in poetry.
Yeah, that's how you should do it.
They call it slams.
You might know about the famous grammarian Sibawayhi. At least you might know him. No.
No, nobody knows.
No,
I am
no one
the
knows
scholar of
Everybody's
linguistics,
shaking
but not
their
of. Come on.
Anyway, he is the guy who
Grammarian.
basically founded Arab linguistics.
Okay.
And the thing is, he had a very he was Iranian actually. He was Persian, but he learned Arabic, and then he wrote. Al-Kitab. It's basically just called the book. The first comprehensive the book. Yes, the first comprehensive grammar of Arabic, the Arabic language. But then he left Baghdad and he went back to Persia and wrote nothing more for the rest of his life.
He only wrote the book.
He wrote a bunch of stuff, but this was pretty. He wasn't old, but he left Baghdad because what? Because he was so embarrassed by a confrontation that was set up by one of his adversaries in linguistics, where this guy brought him into like basically a Munadama, and he said, okay, so how would you conjugate? Well, how
Everything's Munadama.
The question was about
what case endings would you put on these specific words in this sentence? And it's a very, very complicated one. Basically, there's two right answers, but in Arabic, there's never two right answers, so one of them has to be right. Okay.
What's the case ending?
Case endings.
For all the people out there.
The case endings, what function a word has in a sentence, basically. You have this in German. In English you don't, in Swedish you don't, but in Arabic it's a central part of the language. The i'rab, it's also kind of the definition of knowing Arabic well, according to most educated Arabs, is knowing your i'rab, like doing it right. And it's not
I
that
feel
easy.
targeted.
Me too.
Yeah.
Like if it was like
You were
Ahmed
targeted.
likes me, Ahmed would have a specific ending, and then I
Exactly.
like Ahmed would have another ending.
Exactly. If you're the object, the subject, or the sentence, etc.
God,
Or if there's a preposition that comes after it.
Yeah, that's another. Then it's a genitive, you would call it. No, it's E.
That's what I meant.
Anyway, so let's get back to the story about who I want to be. So he was set up. He was brought into a Munadama. He was asked to answer this very, very complicated question. He was supposed to be like the main authority on language. So what happens is he gives one of the two correct answers, and then his adversary, instead of saying, "Oh, you're wrong, I think you're wrong," he says, "Aha!" And then he draws a curtain, and behind that curtain there is a Bedouin.
Oh God!
I thought
And
it was
this
going to say
Bedouin-
Jew. But
Because
preposition.
there's a preposition. Ooh. Behind this curtain, there's a Bedouin straight from the desert, and he says, "You're wrong, Sibawehi. You're wrong. It's supposed to be the other way." And Sibawehi is so embarrassed, he has to like leave and go back to Persia. And he never comes back and never writes anything.
God, that's a man of
so
honor.
wait, are you the Bedouin or Sibawi?
I'm the Bedouin.
Of course. Wow. Oh my lord.
Anyway, so the thing you need to know the backstory here is, of course, that according to traditional Arabic grammar, the Bedouin is always right. Because the pure Arabic is from the Arab, the Arabs of the desert. So if an actual Arab, meaning a Bedouin, shows up and says, "Oh, we would do it this way," then you're defeated, because he's supposed to be kind of the source of correct language.
You have to leave the country.
Yeah,
of
exactly. It's like, you're
embarrassment.
wrong. The Bedouin said you're wrong, so you just have to go.
I can definitely see you as the Bedouin, to be
The
honest.
Bedouin behind the curtain. Yes,
Yeah.
that's me.
I think we should start introducing Kalam podcast as welcome
Which
to
I'm
is
the
Kalam,
Indian of the
true.
band.
the
because
Bedouin
you're
behind the
linguist
curtain
here.
of Middle Eastern podcast.
Wow.
Okay.
Speaking of correct and incorrect grammar, there's a game that me and you, Edgar, often play. It's called Incorrect Plurals.
Oh yeah, I love that game.
How do you play?
Okay.
We talked about this in Cairo.
I'm
Right?
gonna try to
Yeah.
move. I'm gonna try to move on from the fact that no one asked me who I wanted to be in the.
Edgar!
But no, let's.
You're the
let's-
Sultan.
No,
You're
oh,
the
the Sultan. Yeah, but they're
Harun
historical
al-Rashid.
sultans. I was gonna say Sheikh Imam, the blind sheikh, who is fun and sings Marxist songs against President Sadat and is blind and is fun. That's who I was gonna be. Anyway,
Excellent choice.
We're so sorry.
that's fine. That's fine. Totally. I'm just gonna try to wipe my tears.
Just cry a little bit.
So the plural game.
Yeah.
It's a very fun game.
Fun game.
That it was you, Arthur, my brother. He's almost like a brother to me, and Amira and I that came up with it kind of in Cairo while
Hurriya,
drinking beer
Yeah.
at Hurriya,
Yeah.
one of the best bars in Cairo. And basically, it's a game where La'bat al-Gama, the plural game, where essentially you take an Arabic noun and you apply the incorrect plural to it.
Okay.
So, for example, kursi, meaning chair, the proper plural of kursi is karasi. But if you play this game, it's like incorrect answers only. So you'd say
Kursiyat.
kursiyat or
Kurus.
or karakis,
Kararis. Yeah.
kararis.
Akirras.
People might be wondering, why is this funny? It's funny because broken plurals in Arabic are very random.
Yeah, they
right?
are.
They're totally
Yeah.
random, yeah. So okay, so that's
What's the
a
plural
thing
of
you need to
taxi?
know. Yeah.
What's the plural of taxi? What would you say, Nora?
Kissa.
Tex-
Basically, it's funny.
I would say tekassus.
Okay, this is actually funny. We should do this for real. This is gonna be extra material for all our
You've been playing this game for a while. You just said, okay, this is actually funny.
But we can just have this. If you pay $10 a month, you can join us for one
Oh my
one
God.
One
session a month.
You can be the Nadim.
online, of course.
For $3 a month, you can be the Nadim.
Anyway, so the backstory is, of course, for those of you who don't know Arabic, is that I think this is probably the only language of the world where one of the most difficult things to learn when you're learning to understand when you're learning the language is the plurals, because it's totally random. There's like 30 patterns or something like that. And
Do you know the patterns?
Yeah, I mean, I know a bunch of them. You do too, but you don't know which one goes with
No,
which
like
singular.
I cannot make sense of them when I see them like that. I know how to use the words, but I can never like spell it
Oh.
out like that. I think
well,
that's
I
where
do.
you come at it from different
Are you
points of view.
are you saying there's a logic behind kursi karasi? Like there's
No,
a
there's no
No,
logic.
no,
okay,
it's just
well,
we're
that's
talking
the
about the
weird
10
thing.
patterns. It's 10, right?
30.
30?
There's like,
Okay, I only know
There's
that there's
10
10.
verb patterns.
10
That's
verb
different.
Okay,
Plus
that's,
another
those
5.
are the ones I know.
Plus another 5 which are uncommon, but which still exist.
Yeah, yeah.
For example, for taking on
The secret menu. No, that's number 9.
Oh.
we have the other. You have the other 5. I think one of them is, which is my favorite reason for having a specific pattern for a verb, is to take on a color or a physical defect.
That's not a secret one. That's number 9.
That was the one I asked about.
Is it?
Edgar said that's
Is it
number
not?
9.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you wish you were Hmir.
I'm supposed to be the Bedouin in the podcast, and
You are not. You're
embarrassing
downgraded.
myself.
The Sultan is taking over.
Literally.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
Sultan
you're
took off his
And he turns out to be a
turban
Bedouin.
and put on another turban.
You're right.
Anyway, okay, 15 minutes in, we've just talked
Oh
shit.
my God.
I mean, this is what we're supposed to do essentially, but there
Give me some
are
wine.
some things that we could address.
The Bedouin
Oh,
is
Where's
you're
the
embarrassed.
quick, Sam. Okay, can I just add, speaking of language, I did such an interesting interview this week with something that is completely unrelated to the podcast, but I spoke to a linguistic expert that, speaking about Arabic language specifically, and he said that there is, perhaps you guys know this already, but he said there is something called arvspråkstagare, talare, which in English would translate to heritage speakers. Which is basically kids that grow up to parents that have like are immigrants, or they themselves are immigrants as children, and they come and they learn a language through their parents,
Right.
and then as they grow older, their second language becomes the more dominant one, which means that in my case that would be that Arabic becomes, you know, the second language because you're not as advanced in that, and that when you have arvspråkstagare, heritage speakers, it is very common for them to learn the language in terms of like the accent and stuff like that, but you cannot figure out the grammatics of it.
Yeah.
Like it's very difficult for you, especially because you only get like the accent, you get a feel for it, but you can never actually break it down the way you would if you learn the language at like an adult age, for example. And I was sitting there, we were talking obviously about my own like because I've had this thing with Arabic. And I remember I was fascinated by everything that he was saying, and that's why I was fascinated by how you learned Arabic.
Yeah.
You learned it as an adult,
Of course, yeah.
so then you learn all the patterns. Whilst I think that you and me, like Edgar.
So Sam learned. Okay, we're gonna just brush past that.
Yes.
No, I forgot Arthur's name.
Arthur. So sorry. No, God. Arthur, I know.
So Sam learned as an adult.
Yes.
Arthur and I learned as sort
Children.
of children, adolescents.
Yeah.
You learned as a very young child.
Yeah. But did you guys learn the language through like a grammatical?
A little bit, yeah. We did take lessons at school, and I've taken lessons as an adult as well. But my main, I think, so I have a bit of both. But I think our language is mostly colloquial. I mean, it flow. Our accent is good. Our like pronunciation is good, and we can flow in our language. Sometimes we mess up, you know, depending on how long it's been since we've been in like an Arab country or whatever. But we definitely have studied the grammar as well. And you've just been in Nora. You've just been in Amman studying. You mentioned the verb patterns. Yeah. So I've been on a.
No one does that. Who's a native Arabic speaker?
Yeah, exactly. I've been on a similar journey.
Patterns.
No, but no one studies their own language. It's very uncommon. Unless you're interested in linguistics.
Well, that's where I would disagree, actually. I mean, that's a weird thing about Arabic specifically. Very few other languages. I guess Chinese has the same situation, but since Arabic has this diglossia, as it's called, where you have two languages within one language, at least two.
Yeah.
With the Amiya, the ordinary everyday language that, you know, even if you're well educated, that's what you speak.
Exactly.
But on the other hand, you have the Fusha.
And Fusha is, according to this expert, is the second language of everyone. Like nobody has that as the first language, which is
no one grows up speaking Fusha.
No.
No.
Even if you grow up like in an academic family or whatever.
No, that would be super weird.
That would be super weird.
I mean, it's a very standard joke of like, you know, Arabic YouTubers, etc., talking about.
أحبك يا ابني.
Oh God, no.
Yes.
Nice. Nice case ending
See
there.
what I did? See what I did? No, say?
That's what I had. Okay, moving on.
Bedouin
moving
says
on.
okay.
Yeah.
No, but the thing is, even Arabs learn Arabic as their mean in school. They study it in the way that we would study English, perhaps. It's closer, of course. But if we would study Danish, for example, as Swedes, we would study Danish from like first year of primary school, and we would study it not as something we would ever speak in the street. We would practice learning Danish and learning all the rules and etc. I mean, I'm sure you all come across this. I mean, Arabs talking about how much they hate studying Arabic. That was my worst subject in school. I hated Arabic.
No one.
And they don't mean if you say that about I didn't like studying Swedish. In Sweden, you mean I didn't like, writing essays or writing, trying to write a short story or something. That's what we do in Swedish. We study Swedish. We don't study. We do study some rules and discuss grammar, etc. But we don't study how to do Swedish because we know that. And this is very different.
But I mean, in Egypt, people talk about الواحد يكلم مصري, like once the person speaks Egyptian, which is عامية, and then he's saying it باللغة العربية, like in Arabic, not even like the distinction فصحى. In ordinary speak, you don't even make the distinction between فصحى Arabic and عامية Arabic. You just speak. You're talking about Egyptian versus Arabic, and Arabic is just Fusha, is something else. It's like it's annoying. Like stop speaking Arabic. We're speaking Egyptian right now.
Also, I mean that is probably because Masri is pretty. I mean, it's not very. I mean, it's not hard for an Egyptian speaker to learn Fusha per se, but it is different. It has even like
Iraqi is way closer to Fusha than Egyptian is.
Yeah, and Shami would mean very close, and some dialects of the Gezira, like Arabic peninsula dialects, would be even closer. But no dialect is actually close to Fusha. No. I mean, no one speaks Fusha.
Yeah,
no one has case endings.
Someone told me that Western Sahara apparently is like very close to Fusha, but can't confirm or.
Might be Western Sahara saying we're the proper Arabs or something like that to counter Moroccan
Maybe it's the
propaganda.
Listen, it was my Iraqi friend.
Bedouins behind the curtains.
It was my Iraqi friend Muhammad, who works for the UN, who said he made a trip to Western Sahara, and he spoke with what UN people do. I guess they meet children and they take pictures with them. And he was like, the children speak. I don't know. That's what he said.
I'm not saying. I think there's two explanations of that. One is, of course, that when you go far west enough, if you're from Mashriq, from the eastern Arab countries, you end up meeting Arabs who you do not actually understand at all, except if you switch to actual Fusha. I mean, Moroccan Arabic is. I mean, I remember this living in Palestine. I had Palestinian friends, who were 20, 25, and they were like, I would say Arabic is, there's different dialects, but it's the same language from Morocco to Iraq. And they said no, you're wrong. It's the same language from Iraq to Tunisia, Algeria, but then it's a different language. That's not Arabic. They don't do Arabic in Morocco. And
of course they do.
Of course they do. I mean, they write their newspapers in the same Fusha as everyone else, for example. But the dialect is so far off that you can't just do this code switching, which people usually do, up to kind of a more mufaqqaf level where you can communicate. But you have to actually switch to something else. Yeah. And so, I mean, that might be one reason the kids actually know how to switch,
do they mean that Tunisian would be easier to understand than Moroccan?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. It's
hard. Mostly a bunch of French,
I would say it's the same language up until Libya, and then Algeria and Tunisia, I would say, are included in like the Darija kind of sphere.
Yeah, kind of, but still Tunisian is much
Tunisian
worse.
Is definitely easier than Moroccan.
Yeah.
I would say the distinction between language and dialect is extremely arbitrary.
Yeah.
Almost as arbitrary as the broken plurals.
There's 30 patterns and no one knows which fits with which.
Oh my god, I thought they were
almost as arbitrary as the direction of this podcast.
Literally.
I mean, I think
do you mean literally or figuratively?
I was going to say another thing actually about Western Sahara. I mean, weirdly enough, certain parts of northern Africa were populated pretty late by Arabs. People who came in the late Middle Ages. I mean, tribes who moved sometimes all the way from Yemen. They kept kind of moving out of the deserts of the Arabic Peninsula, and some of them moved all the way through northern Africa. So you have like areas populated by tribes who came very late, so to speak, and those tribes
filling the various vacancies of Bedouin behind the curtain positions.
Exactly, yeah.
Throughout
there was a huge demand for Bedouins behind the curtain, so they were like there came requests for more Bedouins, and they heeded the call. No, but seriously, so they came pretty late, which means that some of these tribes might have a very quote-unquote pure Arabic compared to, for example, northern Algeria, where the Arabs came much earlier, and where they mixed a lot more for a much longer time, for example, with Berber-speaking people. Of course, I mean, the main reason why that guy is so weird is because it's half Berber language. I mean, it's mixed up both in terms of grammar and words, etc.
And French.
And French.
And French, yeah.
So, okay, 25 minutes in.
We're still not on track.
Should we say something about, like, okay, Assad fell.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Famously, the Sultan of Syria. And we've all seen the pictures that the jihadists / terrorists / rebels, depending on... What did you say? Takfiris, yeah, I guess, depending on
the Kurds
what
call them Takfiris,
persuasion you are. All the pictures that they've dug up from the various Assad family palaces and the Ba'athist headquarters of Bashar al-Assad, sort
Speedos.
of playing
he
like...
loves Speedos.
He loves Speedos. He loves like pool parties, and there was a very cute photo actually of him, I guess as like a young kid, like playing with his friend's hair. You know when you shower and you have shampoo, like if you've showered with a sibling and you put shampoo in your hair and you like make a mohawk. He was like doing that to his friend.
He was
they looked so... No, I believe he was younger. So we've all seen these pictures, and Syria is, according to some people, liberated. According to some people, been taken over by a Israeli jihadist puppet government. This is a polemic, isn't it? We started our Syria series. Syria series. This is harder to say than expected. And we've released a few episodes with various experts about the Assad family, about HTS, about sort of the whole history of Assad family, Syria relationship to the Soviet Union and then Russia. What do you guys, do you have any thoughts on anything related to this? Is something has surprised you about this reporting or this process?
Okay. I think what has surprised me the most is the immediate reaction to want to go back. I was in...
You mean go back to Syria?
Go back to Syria.
Yeah.
As
Syrian
people,
refugees or migrants.
Any Syrians that live like abroad in any way, or even like at the border to Syria, seem to be just they have been waiting for this opportunity to go back as soon as possible. And I was in a place called Jerusalem Falafel here in Stockholm the other day.
Oh yeah.
And all of the
Damascus,
guys, in Södermalm.
Hornsgatan.
Next to Biograf Victoria.
Okay, there's two of them then.
Well, but
the other one's really close to Riksdagen, so we used to go eat lunch there all the time.
There you go. But is it Syrians that work behind the counter as well?
Probably Palestinians. Yeah.
Okay, well here it was Syrians, all of them. And all of them were also really excited to go back home to Syria. And I was asking, aren't you guys just going to wait a little bit? How about... You
Party
just wait
pooper.
and see. Well, yes, I am.
They've been waiting for 13 years.
They have been, but what is another 6 months then? Like, I understand the need to want to go back to your country, but you don't, like, what worries me is that people will go back longing back home, because that is such a human feeling to want to go back home. But once they are there, they have to make this insane trip yet again.
Let me give you a counterpoint to that. Just a thought that I had right now. I mean, let's say that the country's, it was liberated or taken over or whatever you want to say by HTS, which is a group that comes out of Jabhat al-Nusra, which was directly under the tutelage and leadership of Daesh, ISIS, and Al-Qaeda. So maybe, Syrians that are abroad, millions of them, I don't have the exact figures, but literal millions in Europe, in Lebanon, in Jordan, in all around
Turkey.
the Arab world, and,
Turkey.
in Turkey, obviously. Maybe they feel like, in order to affect change or influence the direction that this new Syria takes, we need to make our presence felt.
Absolutely.
So maybe there are lots of people that sympathize with HTS that travel there and or that are going back and they want to support them for that reason. They want to influence like that. I'm sure that there are a lot of Syrians that are very sort of apprehensive and worried about this group HTS, and for that very reason they're traveling back to make their voices heard and make their presence felt.
That's wonderful.
That's
good.
Be like,
that's
maybe because HTS is definitely, Jolani is definitely feeling the pressure and is constantly in all interviews talking about the need to respect the pluralism and diversity of Syrian society. And I saw actually I'm just going to jump on
Go.
I saw an interesting interview that Jeremy, what's the guy's name? The senior BBC guy, Jeremy Bowen?
I don't know who that is.
I know it is,
He's been around for a while. He got an exclusive interview with Jolani.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked him a bunch of questions about these, minority rights issues and about Israel, a bunch of shit. And something stuck out to me. So he asked him about women's rights specifically. And Jolani said, look, in Idlib, where we've been in power for better part of a decade, or half a decade maybe. So he said the universities have stayed open, and I think it's 60% female enrollment. What he didn't mention, obviously, which was a part of our episode that I did with Arwa Ajoub, is that the political decision making in Idlib was done through a Shura Council, which excludes women by design. However, though, it was still interesting that he made that point about female enrollment in universities. Clearly, also he was prompted by the BBC veteran reporter by the example of Afghanistan. And he said, "We're not Afghanistan.
No.
Syria is a very different place. We're not a clan, a tribal-based society. We have huge urban cities with lots of different people. So obviously women will play a huge role in the future of Syria, but no specifics." He then was asked about alcohol. Which I thought was a great question from this old, old
Important.
BBC veteran journalist. Like any old journalist, probably
can I booze?
probably a booze hound.
Yeah, of course he is.
And he said, this is one of the many questions I can't answer at this point because we are in the process of setting up a constitutional committee which will write a new constitution, and that constitution will decide on matters like that. And whatever that constitution is, the future politicians ruling Syria will have to abide by. So that is, I'll get to you. So that is obviously something that is hugely important. Who sits on this constitutional committee? Who has influence there? I did see a very, honestly, I love reports that have to do with bars in Middle Eastern capitals.
The most important.
The independent, the Arabic version of the British newspaper, the Independent Arabiya, did a fantastic video report from various bars in Damascus, asking the barkeeps, and these were kind of like dingy bars, the kind I really love.
Yeah,
of course.
And they were asking the barkeeps, have you been pressured at all by HTS to shut down? He said, no, actually, they came by, not for a whiskey, but
of course,
but to say
hi.
Just to say that just keep your business as usual for now.
Yeah, of course, for now. I mean, as we were sitting here drinking wine, I'm not a booze hound myself, but
not me, as a matter of fact.
not
you're
Arthur.
working later.
He's a working.
Definitely me.
Arthur, because I remember his name now.
Yes. Anyway, but I mean, I think it's kind of fascinating how this is for so many Westerners. The go-to question is like, well, will there be beer? Is this really the central question?
Well,
it's one of them.
It is.
But I mean, I think it's a symbolically important question, and I think, of course, I want to have a beer.
Would you enjoy Cairo as much if you couldn't drink alcohol?
No, of course not. Of course, it would be depressing. Anyway, but what I'm trying to say is I was going to get to another news story that we had the last week, where the head of the Swedish Football Association, also the former Prime Minister of Sweden, came out, and Sweden did not only not vote no or abstain from voting pro.
They voted yes.
The Saudi application for
My upcoming column is about this topic.
For Saudi application for during the World Cup. And the thing is about the booze question is he was specifically asked, but what do you think about human rights? Like, what is up with you? Can you actually vote yes to this? And he was like, well, I think it's going to be fine. FIFA has really strict standards. And like, this is obviously not true.
Strict beer standards.
And then they said like, well, I also got positive answers to all my questions except for one. They couldn't promise me that there would be beer at the football matches.
Well, I mean,
okay, why do you? How you like? Maybe he was trying to make a joke because the journalist was asking about can women go to the football matches?
No, he did address all these things, but I think he knows his constituency, which are beer guzzling dudes, jugsters.
I mean,
look. The thing is, what I think about this is that I'm really, really happy that Saudi Arabia is finally going to change its policies towards women, migrants, and LGBTQ people and political dissidents because they have such a huge incentive to do so. Because now FIFA is hosting a festival in their country. Notice I said festival.
I do agree with you. I think it might be a positive.
Saudi Arabia is not going to change at all. FIFA needs Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia doesn't need FIFA.
No, I think they do actually. I don't think it's a joke.
For soft power. Saudi Arabia's not going to change.
No, but I think it might be, that they might actually kind of try to go towards like accepting, for example, women watching football.
Yeah,
that
sure.
kind of stuff.
But
I'm not saying it's going to change fundamentally.
Yes, but Sam, the bar is in hell in Saudi Arabia. Look, like I have a bunch of friends in Egypt who are like, woke and queer and whatever, and they're going and they're like playing DJ gigs in Saudi Arabia, and they come back, they're like, it's opened up so much. Do you know that women can drive now and they have cinemas and people are allowed to listen to music in public?
Oh, wow.
I mean, is this really progress? Look, I don't ascribe to this notion that if you like trade with a dictatorship, they'll become more democratic just because you're democratic. I think it's the other way around. Lex.
And everyone knows
ipso
FIFA
facto Russia.
And everyone knows that FIFA is the most corrupt, organization on this planet. Maybe perhaps behind Assad, who just fell.
Jamal Khashoggi.
Do you think I'm sitting here defending
Nobody's
Saudi
denying.
Arabia?
Jamal Khashoggi.
Nobody's denying that. It's just.
Tell me
what I was trying to
controversial. Okay, Nora.
Okay, so when it comes to this, like, there is a Swedish hypocrisy, and I would say that it's Western in general, because I remember when the World Cup was going to be held in Qatar, I think it is very important to which countries we give some type of liance or a space to be problematic, and which countries we do not give that space to be problematic. Yeah. We know that certain countries they aren't very good to women, they aren't very good to LGBTQ, sure. But we also know we have like a full state that is, we have the US, which is like an imperialist whole that has just been occupying the world, basically wherever they go in. But it is. Wherever they go in, they destroy these countries. And then we also we don't have any problems including Israel in any of these, like Eurovision Song Contest or the Olympics, despite making really clear boundaries when it comes to anything that has to do with anti-Western values. Yeah. So I do think it's hypocritical to take such a strong stance against Saudi Arabia and Qatar, but not doing that against, honestly, the US and Israel.
I completely agree, but I don't think that but I think, look, I remember this discourse at the time, and it really fucking annoyed me, because it's like, because certain Western journalists are hypocritical, maybe, let's say most, are hypocritical and don't single out the US and other problematic Western countries, then no one has the right to criticize Qatar. And especially because at the time we were like, Qatar supports the Palestinians. What the fuck have they done to send them to?
No,
by the way,
that's
a sidebar.
Going back to the question of Assad.
Yeah, but also come on. I mean, like, you're a Western journalist, Nora, even though your parents are Iraqi. You're a Western journalist. Do you feel like you shouldn't have the right to comment on Qatar's
no, I definitely
human
think
rights
I should.
record?
No, for sure. And I really...
The thousands of South Asians
100%,
were killed?
Yes, of course. But I think it itches me the wrong way that we only comment on Qatar's wrongdoings, but we never do about Israel or about the US.
Of course.
The US is shit.
I totally agree,
I don't think that we should talk about we. I think we should talk about, we are our own journalists as individuals, and then there are systems, and we should criticize those systems, and I do. But like, when an individual journalist who was in Qatar, I remember there was this guy who went in with this like pride scarf or whatever. It was just like a white journalist who just did it, obviously for some views and some clicks, and people were like, this guy, he's like, saying that he was just doing it for show and being provocative, which he was, but at the same time, guys, like, you end up defending Qatar, and that is just an impossible position to be in.
I mean, it's a good segue actually back into the question of Syria. But I mean, for real, I mean, I think this is the most common from quote-unquote left people, quote-unquote anti-imperialists.
I think Israel should be banned from Eurovision, by the way, just to make the
record
straight.
100%. They're not in Europe.
Listen, anyway, they're going to fix that themselves now by privatizing their public broadcaster, so they will not be in the Eurovision.
Are they doing
I'm
that?
sure they'll find the
yes
loophole. I promise you they will.
Okay. But anyway, so I mean, I think it's an interesting question because a
It
lot.
would be so easy for me to boycott Eurovision. I never watched it. Sorry. Okay. Continue.
I think it's a very, I mean, because from the quote-unquote left, or very tiny, smaller fractions of the left, there's been this discussion about Assad being, I mean, for example, saying, using, I mean, one question is, of course, them portraying Assad as some kind of the friend of the Palestinians. This we have covered on several podcast episodes, so we don't have to go back do that again on this Munadama, where we're supposed to have a good time.
We can just
But
refer
on
to
the other
Rashid Kharidi and what he says.
Yeah, but I think on another, what's really fascinating to me is there's so many, or there's a substantial number of people being like, oh, now you see, the West, they're fine with Islamists as long as they're not anti-Israel. I'm saying like, well, sorry, but you're doing the exact same thing now. You're saying we cannot support the people who brought down the Assad regime because they're supposedly Islamist, or they're Islamist, but supposedly the Salafi terrorists, etc. So therefore we should have supported Assad as leftists. Yeah. On the other hand, you're saying that in on the question of Palestine, it's the same people say is it wrong even to kind of bring up that it's somehow somewhat problematic that Hamas is a Salafi hardcore Islamist organization.
Exactly.
Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
The same way that I don't have any problem supporting in principle the Palestinians in this conflict, or whatever, without having that or allowing that to become a question of being pro or anti-Hamas. You should do the same thing in Syria. This is not a question of you can be very, I mean, as I would be, if Hamas took over all of historical Palestine today, I would be very worried. It would be what are they actually going to do to the Jews? That would be a very substantial...
To the Palestinians.
Yeah.
And to the Palestinians, of course. But I mean, this is a very substantial question to ask about Hamas, of course. But in the same way that I still support 100% the Palestinians' struggle to live in freedom and self-government. I support the same thing for Syrians. And I don't ask the question is this movement that brought them down, is it 100% great? Is it going to be great for everyone? Is it, progressive? Is it... I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that they are. I'm saying that is a secondary question. That's a question you get to after.
First we
celebrate the fact that they brought down a horrendous, murderous dictatorship that's been ruling this country and stifling its development on all levels for 54 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, the fact that people who call themselves leftists or even intelligent human beings cannot make this connection is to me it's a mystery.
I think there needs to be space for both, of course, but you're right that it should be secondary. And I think what we've been seeing so far, especially the reactions from Syrians, is the celebration first of all, and then we'll deal with the consequences. What do you think?
Can we let Syrians decide a little
let them
bit?
be happy at the
and we let Syrians fucking decide.
Or let them take the lead at least.
Take the lead. Yeah. But that's the other question. Is of course. I mean, I saw this. Very very good tweet on this topic saying oh, hi, internet person, saying, I'm worried about what might happen now.
Yeah.
Do you not think Syrians are worried about what might happen now? Do you
not
know that there might be problems going
You're lifting
ahead?
an arm.
Given the fact that they've been living in a dictatorship for 54 years and they've been in a civil war for 14 years, I think they know that shit is not going to be easy and perfect from now on. I think they're aware of that.
Edgar
have we reached the segment where we're gonna talk about fun tweets that we've seen? Because I have a really fun tweet that I saw.
Please tell. I haven't been on Twitter at
Someone
all.
said, "Can I read a leftist explainer on Syria that is not from the U.S. State Department or a 23-year-old Maoist?" And that's kind of the vibes, I think yes, please. Oh my God, thank you, Nora. This is a big privilege and a pleasure and an honor.
Am I the Nadim now?
No, I would never call you that.
You're Nadima.
So, on Syria, I think there's a lot of bullshit going around, obviously, and I think people are in their feelings. I get it, but what you're saying, Sam, it's obviously cherry picking to support Hamas as an Islamist organization that has very little. The difference between their ideology. Their ideology and HTS's ideology are really marginal.
If anything, HTS seems to be more tending towards
pragmatism
at the moment.
At the moment. So it's cherry picking to call these guys, unless you ascribe to what I would consider a conspiracy theory that Israel literally created Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and Jabhat al-Nusra, and HTS, that they're all on Israel's payroll and that they're controlled by the US and Israel.
Well, this is even worth mentioning. I mean, this is so
but people
ridiculous.
really believe that because I'm serious. A lot of people believe that.
Scary that people believe that.
And I think that is kind of worrying that you would think that. And honestly, I think like with most conspiracy theories, I just think that Israel is militarily dominant. But they could not predict all of this happening when they killed Nasrallah. They could not predict these dominoes falling. However, talking about another tweet, there is this Twitter guy who...
This is Twitter guy who makes tweets.
No, he literally... There's a tweet from October 19th, 2023 that says, Hamas will inadvertently bring down the Assad regime.
Ooh.
Isn't that fucking nuts?
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
That is
fucking
crazy.
Nostradamus.
That is crazy.
Who
was
is
it?
this guy? We should have him on the podcast.
We should, yeah. I think
Which
the
is
guy...
23-year-old Maoist from...
No. I think that guy
from
I think his name is Roger Asfour. I've been in touch with him. That's beautiful. Not Asfour, Asfar.
Not as...
His name is not bird, it's yellow.
Also nice.
Asfour.
Also
No,
nice.
I preferred Asfour. It was so cute.
Anyway, he's a Syrian photographer, I think, and I've been in touch with him on Instagram, and he basically said, I don't think we were communicating in Arabic, and he was like, look, I'm pressured, I have too much to do. But inshallah, we can speak to him because that take is fucking nuts that he predicted that.
That is crazy.
If you know the region, you could see, how he would reach that conclusion. It's not illogical, hypothetically speaking, but making that
assumption is
at
wild.
that time is wild. No, but I think it was the MERIP has been doing some great. The only commentary really you would need to look at is they have been assembling commentary from a lot of different knowledgeable people. It stands for Middle East Report something. It's an old leftist or left-leaning magazine which covers kind of the Middle East and from an academic perspective, basically. They have great academics who have some kind of progressive positions commenting and writing on the Middle East in general. But they had a series of newsletters out recently discussing what is your take basically on the fall of Assad and your take on the reaction from the rest of the world. And I think it was really, many of them mentioned the same thing that I've been thinking about a lot, which is something that is kind of really a throwback to 2011, which is, do Arabs not have agency? Do Arabs never do things?
Yeah.
Because from a lot of, of course, from a lot of neoconservative,
everyone's just controlled by Israel. Or
exactly.
It's
from a lot of right-wing people, that's it makes sense. They are conspiratorial, in their backbones. But a lot of leftist people in the West, when it comes to the Middle East, they suddenly stop thinking that people in the region might have opinions, might be allowed to autonomy, and agency, and might be able to do things. For example, bring down a regime or support people to do that.
Of course.
And I think that
Completely
is a fascinating question, which is also where these conspiracy theories come from. It's it couldn't just be Syrians who fucking hate this guy to the extent that even the army just kind of gives up as soon as they have the opportunity because they don't want to be in the army. None of them do. People have been fleeing the country to get away from being conscripted into the army, and the people who were conscripted into the army are like, oh, right, we are losing this war, let's just leave. Yeah. Let's just let them win, because that's what we want. Yeah. I think that was happening to the Syrian Arab army, and I think people not respecting the fact that Arabs have agency, I think you do not deserve to call yourself, a progressive even.
So, you suggested MERIP as a pretty good source to follow things in Syria. Should we each suggest something before we log
good
off?
Sources,
I'm going to suggest following a Syrian analyst called Ayman Jawad Al-Tamimi. If you're listening, Ayman, I really want you on the show. I've been trying to get in touch with you for so long. And if anyone,
DMs.
if anyone who's listening has any way to get in touch with him, please let me know. He's on Substack, he's on Twitter, and on Twitter he's really calling people out who've been pro-Assad, really being actually, now you're talking about mass graves and stuff. You were pro Assad a week ago. He's a very clear-sighted, progressive. I feel like he's a bit like, he's very nerdy. He's very like his pictures are absolutely insane. It looks like he took them with like a webcam from
We knew this guy.
1999. Yeah. Ayman Jawad Tamimi. That is my suggestion to follow on Syria. Do you have one, Nora?
I have a suggestion on what not to do, which is to not read or listen to CNN in any way regarding Syria at all. Like, don't even go there. Clarissa Ward. Just avoid it at all costs. Also, I remember this entire thing with the last thing that became a big sensation when they thought that she was pretending to like the airstrike thing
in southern Israel.
Exactly, but that was debunked though by a bunch of analysts. So it wasn't that she actually was faking. Maybe she was exaggerating. Blah blah blah. But it's just there is something very like unclear going on with CNN in general when it comes to what's happening in the Middle East, and I would avoid it at all costs.
They just don't fact check.
Just to be clear, you're not saying this just because you dislike their point of view or something. You're saying like it's been shown over and over again that they make shit up.
They make shit up. Things aren't clear. The reporting isn't really serious.
When they were like, that was CNN, right?
Which
where
one?
where they interviewed someone who's supposed to be a prisoner.
That's what we're talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the same person, yeah.
That's Clarissa.
Yeah, and they were interviewing someone who's supposed to be like a prisoner from Sadnia.
Yeah, he's turned out to be an Assad guy who was there for 2 months for bribery or something. Look, I think you're absolutely right. Don't follow CNN when it comes to the Middle East, because CNN, and many other issues like Ukraine or whatever other issue, they are fact checkers and they have like.
But
they're
for
very.
this, they do not
for
give
this,
it the same energy.
they send their reporter and they just assume that their reporter is correct. And she was hungry for this story. She wanted the story to be true, and literally like good friends of mine who are like, year-long like analysts on the Middle East. They told me, they like retold this report to me and how moved they were by it.
Oh my god!
Which makes my piss boil as
that is disgusting.
As they say in the British crime dramas. As they say,
I don't accept this. I don't.
Fuck about.
No, I do.
Fuck about and find out.
Anyway. Let's not go into even more horrible turns of phrase that are common in the Anglo-Saxon world. But I was going to say...
we need to wrap this up.
But if we want to talk about something that... I think, and this is not an endorsement in any way, but if you want to follow one of the huge Western news sources, I still think BBC...
Kalam podcast.
Sorry, yes. You should follow Kalam podcast. Sultan Mannheimer. You should actually follow BBC. I think they're far from perfect, and they're often very biased in terms of their politics, but they're doing a good job and they have a lot of people on the ground.
I would say the Times are doing a great job, to be honest.
Of London?
Yeah. The London Times.
Yeah, that's my friend Edmund Bauer.
Edmund Bauer, he's great. He's doing an excellent.
Shout out to Edmund Bauer. He's a good. Listen, Eddie, if you're listening, he's also Eddie. We're both Eddie.
No, I didn't know.
In Cairo.
We have to wrap this up now.
I'm wrapping this up with this last thing.
No, I have to get to
this 4-1 glasses in.
I have a you've said a lot. I have a WhatsApp group chat in Cairo called the Cairo Cabal, and in it there are five people. Their names are Edgar, Edmund, Edward, and Edwin. Yeah.
These are all Twilight characters.
All of them. If anyone finds out about this from state security in Cairo, we will be arrested for spying.
This is amazing.
And we're all called anyway.
I was going to give my suggestion or my recommendation, which I think we all agree on totally, which is Mada Masr. Mada Masr, the only properly independent news outlet in Egypt, which is also doing, it's mostly in Arabic, and you could do Google Translate with that. But they also do a lot of stuff in English, and they have, for example, by far the best article on what was behind in terms of quote unquote geopolitics, the fall of Assad, which is from a random, very very tiny,
they're fantastic
newspaper in Egypt.
Shout out to Madam.
Shout out to them. Support them if you can. Give them your money. Read them.
I feel like since this episode is so long and we've been saying such interesting things, it should come out for free, right?
Maybe it should.
Maybe it should.
Also,
as a Christmas gift for the people.
Oh my god, that's wonderful.
Merry Christmas!
From Kalam.
Eid Milad.
Okay, we're signing out. Nora,
Thank you.
Sam, Edgar, Arthur is out of here already.
Oh, we're so
We got tired of
sorry.
Okay,
I
guys,
literally have
shit, yeah.
a Swedish lesson right
okay, peace out.
Okay, good night.
Thank
Bye.
you very much. Bye.
See you soon.